play is so impactful to our health, and yet we think we grew out of it. So here's one of the things, like adding play to your classroom is good for your kids, but it's actually also good for you. It might just increase your lifespan and reduce your stress and all of those things too, right? When I have a high schooler right now and her favorite assignments are the ones where she gets to make ridiculous, silly videos about sloths and it's teaching some sort of something, right? Everyone loves to play. And maybe it changes a little bit. Maybe I'm not playing with the xylophone anymore as an adult, but play, right, is so valuable for my health and my wellness and my lifespan, all these things.
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the go-to show dedicated to teachers who want to make a big difference in education. Whether you're in your first few years or well into your teaching career, we are here to inspire, support, and empower you with bite-sized tips, simple strategies, and the motivation to lead an education revolution, one classroom at a time.
We're Ashley and Alicia from Rainbow Sky Creations, two Aussie teachers who love all things teaching and learning. We are here to help you thrive as you work toward making an impact in your students' lives while loving your life as a teacher.
We are here to help you bring joy, simplicity, and creativity into your classroom on the daily, because
there are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together we're unstoppable.
Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we record this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers. I'm so glad you've dropped in today because you're going to have the pleasure of listening to my chat with Amy from Planning Playtime. She helps parents and teachers make learning ridiculously fun and effective. She is all about play-based learning, and she has a community of over 2 million members who have embraced her curriculum and research-based, play-based learning program. So if you've been wanting to dip your toes more into incorporating play-based, I guess you could also say hands-on learning into the classroom, you're going to want to have a listen to my chat with Amy. Get ready. Welcome to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, Amy. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So listeners, you're in for a treat because we're going to talk all things about play-based learning. And I think Amy would agree with me that it is pretty magical when you start to integrate more play-based learning into your delivery of lessons.
Yes, absolutely.
So before we deep dive into all this chat about play-based learning, could you tell our listeners a bit about your journey into education and what led you down this pathway?
I absolutely be happy to. So I think it started well before I knew that it was happening back in the day. But when I recognized that there was an issue, it was the day I made a kid cry. And it was a bad day. So I was sitting in a classroom in the US where I live, and it was a K through 2 classroom. So like our kindergarten through 2nd grade. And I was actually a university student. So I was only 18 years old. And I was working in the classroom as a reading tutor specialist, helping kids learn to read it. They'd have me come to work in different classrooms. Anyway, I'm working with this little 5-year-old, and he's one of those kids that's really fun and gets maybe in a little bit of trouble, has a little bit of a hard time sitting still, and his school is not his favorite thing. Sitting still is not his favorite thing. Anyway, so he was such a blast, and we had so much fun together, but he was just not, I had a really hard time getting him to read. He hated reading. And so one day I'm like, okay, dude, really? Okay, you have to at least read one page of your reader before we can have any more fun, right? And he looks at me and he looks up and he has just the biggest giant tears in his eyes. And he says, I thought you were my friend. And I was like, oh, it just hit me so hard. And I went home for the weekend. And I was angry. I was like, what have we done to reading to make it a friendship breaker? Like, it is so bad that it's so detestable, right? It's the thing that you are no longer a friend if you're trying to get him to read. And I was just horrified. I'm like, I love reading. It's the most amazing thing in the world. Like, how have we broken reading for children? And I was so upset, 18 years old, sitting in a college, university apartment, trying to figure out, how do I fix this? Because something is wrong.
Mm.
and don't have a lot of toys in my little single girls apartment living situation. But I found everything I could, and I came back the next week and I'm like, I will fix this. I'm changing this for this little boy and for all the other students that I worked with and for the rest of the term that I was there. And it was amazing. And it had this impact already just with what little I could do there as an 18-year-old feeling like there's something wrong, to the point they asked me to come back as a supervisor for the next year. That was the moment I'm like, we have to change this. This is wrong. And it's been many years since then as I developed our play-based reading curriculum and all those kinds of things, right? But I think that was a big moment. And as I look back, my mom had been a teacher and then she ended up teaching us a lot. And everything she taught me, she made it fun. She made it
Mm.
playful. She just brought play into everything that we did. And that was how I learned. And so I feel like it just felt natural to me. That's how it was. And then I learned the science later. But we were talking earlier about the feels, like you go with your feels a little bit. I'm like, this feels wrong. And anyway, and then I've learned more of the science around it after.
Yeah, absolutely. To have such a specific moment at such a young age, but obviously you can see that your childhood had paved the path for you of learning in a certain way. And when you saw this resistance and you're like, no, this doesn't need to be this kid's narrative. I can change that. That's really powerful. So it explains why you had this amazing business and empire of planning with playtime to really empower educators and parents to incorporate that play-based learning into delivering stuff that every kid needs to learn about, right? Reading, maths, all that jazz.
Oh my goodness,
No
yes,
pressure,
and you
kids.
can you can bring it into everything that you do, and it just my goodness, it is so much more enjoyable. My gosh, have you, like, sat and tried to teach a kid to read where they're just reading, like, one word after the next word, after the next word, right after lunch, and you're both falling asleep, and it's just not fun for anyone. It's torture for them, for you. It's just hard. And I'm thinking, my goodness, there's a better way. And we talked about retention for this sort of thing, when you can make it more hands-on, when you can bring in additional senses and have them using their hands. It just engages their brain on a completely different level, builds so many better neural pathways, and their retention is so much better. It is like a win for everyone
Yeah, for
and a
sure.
lot more fun.
So
Yeah.
could you give us a little bit of the science behind play-based learning? What's the research show in the benefits of incorporating this into kids' learning?
Yeah. So I like to just, when I've done a lot of research around the brain, it's like this giant warehouse thing going on, or this storage area that's happening back here. And so when you're trying to get something, you can put stuff in there, but if you put it in and then you go to sleep, it gets put in a box, like down underneath, like the bottom basement stair closet thing where you're never going to find it again.
I feel
So if
like
you're
there's
trying-
I feel like some wives are going, is this what my husband does when I have this chat? It just gets put down into the basement.
down.
Love
Really
you,
far down.
hubbies.
Yeah. If you're wanting to get something that you're going to be using a lot and you want it accessible right there in the front of your fridge, center shelf, or right there accessible in your pantry, you have to locate it somewhere that you can get to it again. It's going to be very accessible. And so there's some different ways that we do that. And one of those is you can store it in your brain in that space by making it a top priority. And you do that by building lots of connections to it and attaching it to lots of other things. And so there's different ways to get it in. If you can find something that's already front and center in a child's brain and attach this to it, it's like the sandwich effect. Do you guys have Oreo cookies where you live, where it's like a sandwich?
You guys have infiltrated the international market. Of
Okay.
course we do.
I'm like, I just have to make sure. Okay. So if you attach it to something else and you sandwich it in the middle and put it in, you have it in, it's attached to these other things, right? So we are trying to connect it to other things and we have it in, right? So when I think about, I'm trying to teach a child maybe a subject that they think they, don't like, if reading is like the worst or whatever, right? Then I think, okay, what do they like? What's something I already know that they like, right? I have a kid who loves mermaids. Okay, mermaids. We can do mermaids in reading, right? And it can literally be as simple as bringing a toy and having them get to use their toy while they're reading. So you can have a little bin of colored rice or something, and there's some maybe pebbles across the rice, and it has rhyming words if you're trying to teach some phonological awareness or something, or you're trying to do how many sounds are in this word or things like that, or you're trying to read words and you can help the mermaid cross on the pathway or whatever. And it's as simple as like bringing a toy and then they're very invested and you've connected it to something they're already interested in and they have engagement. You're engaging multiple senses in their hands. And so you've increased their retention. You've attached it to something that's more front and center in their brain. There's so many different ways to do that. Just put it in that storage space that's accessible instead of the bottom basement under the cupboard where potentially some husbands may put the things that were selling them, like you said. You know what I mean? We want it in the front.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's finding that emotional connection. So if you've got the kids, that's why we always say when we have new teachers starting in the classroom and we're like, what's the biggest takeaway? And we're like, get to know your students, connect with the students, get them to know you, you to know them, because then you can start to use this magic of what they're emotionally connected to and bring it into your learning. It's going to, like you said, increase that retention of knowing that information. And I think, I don't know, at the moment, I feel like in the world, we're talking a lot about biohacking, like how to live longer, how to do these things. And I feel like we hear lots of words like dopamine and endorphins. And it's like, don't turn your phone on first thing in the morning because you're always going to be trying to get that massive dopamine hit. But the really cool thing is, as I've learned, is with play-based learning, is that the kids who have that emotional connection and you're incorporating play-based, it's one, reducing stress, which unfortunately little kids need. Like life is stressful. Would agree. World is busy and it releases actually dopamine and endorphins. So when you're there teaching that lesson and that kid who loves mermaids sees a mermaid there, they're making progress with their learning. They're going, I feel safe. I feel valid. I feel heard. And then they're like, oh, I'm enjoying this. Let's go with it. And how could you not want to do more play-based learning? It's like the best medicine.
It's so good. And when you're teaching difficult concepts too, you can bring it in. And I've had you on my podcast to talk about this with math and how you can help them start to visualize things. So when you get these tricky concepts, when we're teaching kids to read, a lot of times they're struggling with the concept of blending can be a really hard one for kids, right? And so you can bring in some blocks and you can literally show them how to do it with blocks. Another one we do is we'll get like a little dinosaur or something, and you can just use your arm. And a dinosaur, this literally takes no preparation. And you do each sound, you're tapping the sounds, right? This is the stuff that science of reading aligned, where we're tapping out the sound. And then we're sliding down the slide with our dinosaur to blend the sounds together, right? So we're teaching it, we're doing it, and we're like using our body, we're touching, we're tapping, we're doing all this. And it's like playing with dinosaurs or mermaids or robots, whatever. Maybe they're really neat cats. I had a little girl that we called her the little old cat lady. She just had all of her stuffed cats that were her toy cats. She just loved cats. And we're like, perfect, let's do cats. The cats are amazing. It's very... You can make it so much more tangible and visual for them so they can see what's happening in their brain and start to visualize it in their brain, which makes it, of course, easier for them to learn it too. So it's not just about it being fun. That is helpful. It does engage their brain. It's one of the things that helps you store that front and center in the brain instead of in like the back room of the brain. So fun does matter, certainly. Like kids learn through play. That's how their brains work. But it also helps them actually see and visualize and develop concepts in a way that they can then recreate in their brain later on and see those patterns and recreate those patterns later as they're learning more. So it's amazing.
Yeah. And like when you're talking, there's this bit of me that goes, oh my gosh, like I have to bring this into the classroom. But then that ultimate question is, but how do I? So if you've got teachers who are a bit hesitant about incorporating play into their lessons, could you give us a couple of tips on where to start, like what to do?
Yeah. I think one of the first things is just starting small. Like it's the thing I think we talk about a lot, but I'm actually reading the most amazing book right now called The Compound Effect. And it's this idea that like interest or any of these things, we start small. If you read the book Atomic Habits, he talks about these 1% increases. So you just literally small, little tiny things you start. And it's so doable. You don't even almost have to think about it. You just start with something so simple and so small. Consistency is like the most magical tool in the universe of ever. Everyone needs it. So you just do that one. And you start to see a little bit of a change, right? You start to see the impact of it. Even if you just keep doing that, the trajectory over time has changed. But then as you notice the change, you're like, oh, that's really cool. And then you want to add on a little bit more and a little bit more. And so It just grows over time. Now, in teaching too, once you set these things in place, you can use them over and over again. So that initial creating it takes a little bit of time, but then once you have it in place, it becomes your natural way of doing things. And then it just becomes automatic. It becomes natural. It becomes part of your identity as a teacher and a part of an identity of your classroom. We had the most fabulous story. Actually, we have this adorable little girl in New Zealand who did our Mommy and Me preschool program with her mom during COVID. And then she went back to school, but she had used our reading program as well, which is a play-based phonics program. It's amazing. And so she goes back to her classroom and she's in her school. And I think she was in grade 2, maybe at this point. And her mom told me, she said, she'll go up to her teacher and be like, teacher, this is really great, but what if we made it fun? And then gives her like this whole idea of like how to add toys and how to make it play based. And it just made me giggle because it's like this adorable little girl that's bringing play now to her whole classroom because that's how she learned how to do things. And so that's how her brain works. The impact of it is massive. So start small and find someone who's done a lot of the work for you because you don't have to recreate the wheel to be able to do this. So if you can find courses that maybe help you with ideas of how to do this or sets that have already been created for you and here it's all done for you. Here's the plan, just follow the plan, right? These kinds of resources are available now. And they're aligned to help you with the things that you are required to teach because they're made for you and for the kids. And so when you can find those resources, it can save you so much time and maybe even make it easier. And then, of course, the learning is better. The retention is better. So you're not having to repeat and repeat so often. So you end up saving time in the end anyway, which is amazing.
Yeah, your story about that little girl, it just really resonated how play is an innate learning of children. They are wired to play. They are meant to play. And for some reason, the school system got a bit skewed and we have kept with a system that has been around for 100 years and it's slowly changing. But hopefully when you're listening to this chat with Amy, and if you've ever had that urge to just push against the system and be like, but hang on a second, the science is showing me, the research is showing me that this is beneficial to students, that this is how they're going to learn better. I'm going to get better engagement, better retention. We're going to go through the content quicker. I can extend them or I can build upon their learning. Let's give this a go. Let's take the risk and start incorporating it into the classroom. Say if we pick reading as one area that you want to add in more play-based learning, what are some tools, like 3 tools that they really should have on hand to start using play-based learning in the classroom?
Absolutely. So one of my favorite ways to start bringing play into reading is phonemic awareness. And phonemic awareness is like where we're teaching sounds, right? Prior to starting to teach phonics. And so it's really helping children just understand what they're hearing and break sounds down into the smallest pieces, right? So then when we're teaching them how to recreate it on paper because they're reading it or writing it, right? It's just so much easier and natural. So phonemic awareness is really fun. You can do anything, like you pull games out of your game cupboard. I love using games, and you can use these for math as well. So you pull out a Twister board game or something, and children are hopping for each rhyming word they say, or they're doing it for every sound they count in a word, right? And you can do this in large groups. You can do this one-on-one. And so I love the game cupboard. Game cupboards are also, I think, one of the very best ways to help kids start doing math without them noticing that they're doing math. And so I love getting it, and you don't count for them. Even if you're doing like Monopoly and you know that there's 10 pieces on the side and you're like, just go to the same spot on the other side of the board, right? You don't do that. You let them do their one-to-one correspondence and count the whole way. And you can help teach them some strategies, right? But they figure it out. It's amazing. So I love using games. It's one of the easiest things that you can ever do. Another resource that I really like is just using blocks for all kinds of things. And I use blocks for reading. I use blocks for math. We use them for all kinds of different ways to teach. And I think really any toys, right? You can use essentially any toy and then turn it into a reading tool. And I don't even just use toys. I use stuff from my kitchen because kids, when you can surprise a child, you activate a part of their brain that they would normally be more dormant, right? Our brains are meant to do most of the things on autopilot so we can conserve energy and calories and all that stuff, right? Because our brains uses the most calories of any body part of our body. And if you can surprise them, then they're like, oh, wait, I need to pay attention, right? So when you bring spoons and you start using spoons to teach, then they're like, This is the wrong place for a spoon. Why am I using a spoon to do reading, right? And so one of the activities we did this week is we lined up spoons like a xylophone. We had all the different sizes of spoons, right? And then we were sounding out the sounds, right? So we were counting sounds as we were going through words and just isolating sounds, right? And then getting ready to put them all together. So those are some of the things that I really love, those kinds of tools. And then using curriculum that supports this just makes your life so much easier because you don't have to come up with all the ideas yourself. For me, when I'm teaching reading, a play-based reading curriculum, so we use Play to Read, which is a play-based phonics program that we created. And it does all the hard work for you because it tells you exactly what play to do. So you can go off of it and make it your own and all that stuff. But if you don't have brain power for that day, you just do exactly the play it says. And it says, here, use Play-Doh. Here, use blocks. Here, use cars and drive them all over the place while you're reading. And resources like that just save your brain space, so you can use it for other things and make your life so much easier and allow you to still bring in that play-based element to the classroom and change kids' lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're saying is you can pretty much use anything that's in your house because a novelty item is going to get kids to pay attention and go, hang on a second, what's going on here? Using a curriculum-based program, they've done the hard thinking for you, and it allows you to have a home base, as I like to say. You got the home base, and then you can delve in and out and be explorative with what you're doing. So
Yes.
to me, it goes, go raid a thrift store, an op shop, as we call over here. Go find some stuffed toys or go hit your dollar section at Target, as we over here in Kmart, and go get some tiny dinosaurs or whatever you might need just to start getting your head around it. And I think, look, I'm a bit of a minimalist. Like I do get, there's too much stuff around, I can't handle it. But we're not saying here with Playbase, you have to have every single item for every single fad that's going on. It's just really simple tools that you already have. So you don't need to keep going and reinventing the wheel. Use what you have and just go with that. And start small. I love what you said before about consistency. And I think over the years is probably my biggest takeaway as an adult of, Alicia, be consistent. You will get the gains, you'll get the returns, you'll get the benefits in that friendship or relationship if you keep being consistent and showing up consistent, especially with students in your class and little kids living in your house.
Yes, those ones too. Absolutely.
And I think what you're sharing with us, Amy, is that Playbase isn't just limited to our core subjects. We can be incorporating Playbase into so much of our learning. Sometimes we shouldn't just limit it to our early year kids, that we should give our older students. Do you have any stories of some students above the age of 7 who do love a bit of play-based learning?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I have older children now, right? Like I've got a big range. I've got my youngest just turned 8 and my oldest is 20, right? So I've got a little bit of a range going on. But yes, so when I talk to my 18-year-old and she remembers some of her favorite things that she's ever done in school, right? She had one math teacher that would give them dry erase markers and just have them start writing all over their desks. And so they would get in these groups and they draw all over their desk and they try to she'd give them the problems to solve. And this is like another technique that's really cool that they've researched. Have them try to solve problems before she even taught them how to solve it. So they're trying to come up with ways of how they might be able to solve this. Anyway, so they're doing all of that. But there's so many fun ways. Who doesn't like to play? I think we get this idea that once we grow up, we've grown out of that. We're not. No, play is for adults. In fact, I read research that said that playing card games with your friends every week is like the equivalent of quitting a pack a day smoking habit, on the benefit to your lifespan, right?
Yeah.
It's like play is so impactful to our health, and yet we think we grew out of it. So here's one of the things, adding play to your classroom is good for your kids, but it's actually also good for you. It might just increase your lifespan and reduce your stress and all of those things too, right? When I have a high schooler right now and her favorite assignments are the ones where she gets to make ridiculous, silly videos about sloths and it's teaching some sort of something, right? Everyone loves to play. And maybe it changes a little bit. Maybe I'm not playing with the xylophone anymore as an adult, but play, right, is so valuable for my health and my wellness and my lifespan, all these things. And so, of course, play matters. And you just find different ways to do it.
I heard a stat once. I don't know how relevant it is now, but I feel like it is relevant, that 96% of things we worry about are irrelevant, right? There's only 4% of things we should be like stressing about. So if you're one of these people where you let that 96% consume you, and if you're in education and you let it consume you, my friend, go play, go hang in the staff room, throw around some jokes. And there's something about playing, like you said, playing a card game or playing a board game. It takes your head out of the monotony of life, and it just gets you reducing your stress and enjoying what we were meant to do, connecting with others, learning. And I love how you said, get the board games out, get out the Jenga. There are so many, I don't know, maybe it was 10 years ago, Jenga was a big one that you could teach up, you could add things to it and make it more challenging. Take out the Monopoly and kids, like, let them have a go of learning it. I think that was one of my biggest takeaways I had was when you're probably a roadblock for some teachers is, oh my God, there's things, man. Like I take out the Lego and the kids go nuts. Like they just don't listen to what I'm teaching them. They're just focused on playing with them. And a strategy I always taught like new teachers coming in was like, just put out the new object for 15 minutes and say, guys, you got free play, go nuts with it. Give them the chance to get out that newness of an item and play with it and then regroup after 20 minutes or however long you needed. Maybe you just gave them 10 and be like, see what they've created, get them to share what they enjoy about the object and be like, hey, are you ready for me to throw this into an activity? And they're going to be like, what? We're going to play with this more and learn. You're going to find that immediately kids who might have been stressed about the day, you can see it dropping. Kids who might have been stressed about what they're going to learn, you can see it dropping and they're ready to be receptive. Oh, as a 40-odd-year-old woman, I need to play more. I know that.
It's so true. And I love what you just brought up, right? Because a brain under stress is not open to learning. It's not open to creativity. You can't really be under stress and be creative at the same time. It doesn't work. And so literally the best way to open a child's brain up to being receptive, open to learning is to be able to reduce anxiety and stress that they're having. And so if we can do that by just play, and it's that the research they do around play is so powerful, the impact it can have on, it's just so cool when you get into it. But my goodness, just a little bit of play helps with connection. It helps with empathy. It helps with all of these communication, all these different kinds of skills that we want kids to learn beyond math and speech and reading. And these are all really important, but my gosh, we need them to be like nice humans that get along with other humans and can think and behave with other people and have healthy interactions. And all of these things happen through play. So we're not just teaching the math and it all works together, which is what I love so much. So we just bring it in together. And I love that you're just, letting them introduce the new item, play with it for a little bit, get to free play, be creative, explore it, test it. That's what we do with our brains. And then say, ooh, here's a thing we could do with it. Let me share my idea and then go with it. Love it so much.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? With the play base comes so many skills they can learn, the critical thinking, the problem solving, oh my gosh, creativity, collaboration. And isn't that word resilience such a big like worry for teachers, worry for parents of, am I raising resilient kids? Because they're going into a world that we don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years alone, just thinking of how we're introducing AI and with technology. Not that I'm fearful of it. I'm very intrigued. But we're going into a world where we're being told that 20% of jobs haven't yet been created for the kids in our homes. So, or the kids in our classrooms as well. So, get on board with some play-based learning. You won't regret it. Now, Amy, could you share with our listeners how they can learn more about implementing play-based learning in their classrooms from you?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm at planningplaytime.com and we have just so many resources there. We have a whole shop full of activities and printables and things that are done for you. We also have complete like reading curriculum and we have a complete like play-based preschool curriculum. And then we have a podcast where we talk about kids' brains every week and we get to just talk to some of the top neuroscientists in the world and pediatric psychologists and all kinds of different really fascinating people that have these beautiful ideas to help you understand children's brains better. And like my secret like mission behind the whole thing is to understand our own brains better. So we were like, hey, like this is really important for kids. And guess how we do it? It's by doing it yourself. And it's so lovely because we're helping our children. We get to learn for ourselves at the same time and become healthier ourselves. It's like the most beautiful, fabulous thing in the world. And I love it. So you can find us at Raising Healthy Kid Brains is the podcast. So come visit me and find me on social media, chat with me. I love to talk. It's like my favorite thing.
We have really enjoyed having you on the podcast today. So, my lovely listeners, go connect with Amy. It sounds like she actually wants you to. So, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If you had been sitting on the fence about incorporating more play into your lessons, I hope Amy has converted you. Her enthusiasm and love and passion for play-based learning is certainly evident. And I think when we look at the research behind it to show it's going to help build their creativity, resilience, collaboration, problem-solving skills, it seems like it's something we should be incorporating more into the classroom. Teaching can be stressful, so let's make it as less stressful for you. Yes, it might take a little bit of effort to start delving into incorporating play and that hands-on element into the classroom. But look, the science is showing that our brains are wired for it. We're going to retain information better. We're going to feel less stressed. We're going to feel more engaged. So, my friend, try, if it isn't this week, next week or next term, baby steps, incorporating a bit of play. Make sure you connect with Amy. Her website is fabulous at Planning Playtime, and there's so much awesome information on there. But thank you so much for joining us. And there are rainbows ahead, my friend. And together, we're unstoppable.